Yo, what's up, guys? This is Dobley speaking, and today I'm gonna talk about two different topics, but they're intertwined with each other, and this is very important to the world freedom and democracy. The first topic is that I'm gonna break down the 5 reasons why many BNO Hong Kongers are planning to return to mainland China or Hong Kong, or many of them had already returned, and why. There are 5 reasons that I can provide for my analysis. The second topic is that I'm gonna tell you the differences between the CCP Chinese culture and the rest of the world, especially versus the West, but even that will include Japan and Korea, because Japan and Korea also belong to free world. They belong to the Western democracy system, right? The first thing, why it's really important, because nowadays, you've been always, watching a lot of news to say some Hong Kongers, right, are planning to return from UK to China. Why I say China? Even if they go back to Hong Kong, because everybody knows that Hong Kong now is under control of the CCP already. They have been tranquilized, they have been so-called pacified by the iron fist of the CCP, right? So Hong Kong has already become a authoritative government place, right? They're not a free democracy anymore. And many of them actually, they indeed might love China. They might love CCP China because after seeing the so-called quote-unquote sharp contrast between the Western nations and China, they will feel like, it's time to change their mind. This is pretty predators. This is pretty dangerous for, our Western democracy supporters to really watch closely what's really happening, because the West, we have to pay attention to this kind of phenomenon. Otherwise, we might fall behind CCP China in terms of the striving for the #1 place for the power of speech power. This is really important, because if CCP China were to took the throne of the speech power in the future, the Western democracy would totally be brought down to the base. We might find another dictator here in the Western world, and this is pretty bad. Right. So first of all, what is the difference between Hong Konger and Hong Kongese, right? Usually when we're talking about the Eastern Asian people, we say "nese." For example, China, Chinese; Japan, Japanese. One of the exceptions here is we also have Singapore. No, Singapore is something different, right? Singapore is more like a realm, kind of a realm. For example, we have Korea, Korean; Singapore, Singaporean; Malaysia, Malaysian, right? But I don't know why, it's just for Chinese and Japanese we use "nese." So traditionally, the people who live in Hong Kong, the Hong Kong resident who speak Cantonese, right? Yeah, Cantonese, you see? So we call them Hong Kongese, right? But why would he have a term called Hong Konger, right? It's just plus ER. Why Hong Konger? It's because we know in 2019, we have the extradition law, right? Anti-extradition bill movement towards, they're going against the Chinese government's policy to say you have to extradite this kind of criminal to mainland China for trial. And they say, we are against them, because you never know how transparent the Chinese political system and jurisdiction system is, right? We all know that they are not transparent at all. Everything is under the black box. It's under the table, So that's why they have the massive, parades, right? Massive marches against the CCP government, against the CCP soldiers there. However, we all know that the 2019 anti-extradition law movement was failed. CCP finally used its iron fist to really tranquilize the whole situation, and many Hong Kongers at that time in the street, they're waving the flag of a UK, they're waving American flag, they're waving Japanese flag, but unfortunately, there wasn't any officially, any help from the foreign nation. Some democratic people, some people, the advocates, right, of the advocates of the democracies, they speech against the Chinese movement, against the Hong Kongers. However, finally, the Chinese is having an upper hand, because that if you're not sending any troops officially, there's no way the local Hong Kongers can fight back those Chinese CCP foot soldiers, right? There's no way. The thing is that for the people who really love Hong Kong and want Hong Kong to be independent from China, either physically or politically or spiritually, these people are called Hong Konger. So by their definition, they are the true Hong Kong lover, because they do not just love Hong Kong for its own traditional culture, they are also embracing the democratic side of Hong Kong, and they want to protect that with their life. So these are called Hong Kongers, right? So unfortunately, many Hong Kongers left China after that. Well, I could not use it. Unfortunately, I think that's a fortunate thing, right? Because they can just, keep the root of this revolution, and just in case in the future they might need them to, revolutionize Hong Kong again, or they can have the power to liberalize the whole China. However, the reality of a very sharp contrast, right? Many of these Hong Kongers using BNO, which means British National Overseas. This is kind of special kind of passport to prepare the possible total crackdown by the CCP government after 1997, after the returning of Hong Kong to mainland China. So before 1997, if you were born before 1997, right, you would have the right to apply for the BNO passport. So if you had already applied and you were born before 1997 and you have the BNO passport, you can use the BNO passport to go to UK. Of course, that does not equal the permanent resident, right? But you can use that and you live there for some time. If you're not a criminal, right? If you're doing some sort of contribution to the society and you can sustain yourself and you're able to apply for the permanent residency there in UK. However, well, I'm not trying to say most Hong Kongers will return to Hong Kong. I'm not saying that. I'm not exaggerating, right? But many of them Hong Kongers, right? Now, after living in UK for several years, and they were complaining. They keep complaining about how poor the economy is, how freezing, how chilly the weather is, because Hong Kong used to be the subtropical area, right? But all of a sudden you're going to the more of a cold area in the world, right? Because we're talking about a lot of much higher latitude, than Hong Kong is. So basically, then that kind of a cultural conflict, right? And also it's very hard for them to find a job, and there's no blinking the fact that they might also come across some racial discrimination there, because guys, we're not trying to play angels. We're fallible human beings, right? Even though I'm a Chinese asylum seeker, but I'm not saying every Western nation is perfect. There's no perfect world in this world. There's no perfect nation. We have to admit that racial discrimination still exists in the world. When we're talking about some form of racial discrimination, I'm not talking about everybody, right? There are some people, a small proportion of that, they have some sort of racial discrimination going on in their mind. But do you think the Chinese people are exempt from that? No. The Chinese people are one of the most racist people in the world. Let me tell you, because I know them, because I used to live in that environment, right? Okay, so the thing is that, anyway, it's kind of a language barrier, and kind of a culture differences, right? And food preferences, the culinary culture differences, right? And weather differences, and some kind of racial discrimination or microaggression at least, and also the lifestyle is entirely different. So that's why many people cannot suffer anymore. They say, oh, they've been crying. They said, I cannot continue to live in the UK like that. I'm gonna return home, which means Hong Kong. But everybody knows that Hong Kong is under CCP control. Hong Kong is already a part of the CCP regime. You are not going to enjoy the same freedom as in the 1997, even in the early 2000s. No, the good old time is gone, right? So basically, I'm going to break down the 5 reasons why, right? First of all, like I said, it's the, in any order, there's no priority, right? I would just give you the 5 parallel reasons for that, right? The first reason is cultural difference, right? Because Hong Kong also belongs to Southeastern Asia and East Asia to be more specific. So Hong Kong culture is more like a Cantonese culture with some tints of international flavor, right? Because we know the Hong Kong's colonization history, right? So basically, compare that culture with UK, of course it's different. UK is the so-called authentic Western culture. It's one of the most important origin of the modern Western culture. Well, I'm not talking about ancient Rome or ancient Egypt or some kind of ancient Greek, right? That's more ancient, right? But we're talking about the modern Western culture. That is more like Anglo-Saxon story, history, and Celts, right? Something like that. So basically, the way of thinking might be very different. Asian people, including Hong Kongers, right? We're more like a collective thinkers, right? And we pay more attention to the groups. We pay more attention to how to be seen in the groups. We pay more attention to compete with each other You know what I mean? So Asian kids, we always have a lot of pressure on our shoulder because we want to look good. We want to look rich and famous and beautiful and handsome, whatever. You always want to compete. Well, many people do not have this kind of Christianity belief, so they do not believe in God. So I'm not trying to say the Christians are superior or the non-believers are superior. I'm not trying to compare them, right? I'm just telling you objectively they're different. So the Hong Kongers, like many Chinese, they are also pursuing something like fame, money, this and that, right? So they give them a lot of pressure. They're working really hard. However, in UK, it wasn't like that, right? People also work hard, right? Don't get me wrong. People also work hard, but people are not working that hard, right? So you have a lot of spare time, and the you know that you will need a lot of extra time to do a lot of different things because people all work more slowly. If you go to the government agencies, right, the speed of the public servant, their you know the handling time is also a lot slower than that of Hong Kong and also CCP China and even Japan. So they have to accept a very slow, uncompetitive life. Like I said, you know, Asian people are more like group-centered, right? More like a gregarious, the gregarity there, right? So you have to force yourself to be more friendly and more interactive, and you have to, you're living in a world that's really noisy, kind of in a good way, because you can feel the presence of people everywhere. But in UK, you feel so lonely, right? Especially if you live in a small remote village, you have to walk a long distance to come across one human being, and you say, "Hi, how's the day?" and you hug each other. No, UK people actually keep a certain distance, right? But you know what I mean, right? You spend half an hour and finally you see another living human being. So there's nothing to compare. Even if you're super rich, you cannot show off to people every day, right? But if you're in Hong Kong, you're driving a Lamborghini, everybody know you're driving a Lamborghini and you get attention. So for the attention seekers, no. For the competitors, no. For the passive you know, lifestyle people, no, because UK, unlike just like many Western civilization people, you know, world, right? Many Western civilization nations, the pace of life is really slow there compared to that of Hong Kong and Tokyo. Okay, so and then the food is also very different, right? That's the second factor. The food, especially for UK food, right? If you really love Asian food, you will feel like UK food sucks. Yeah, no disrespect, but you know, objectively, even a lot of UK people, they love Asian food more than they love their own food. But anyway, there are some delicious cuisines there, but most things is just some above potato smash and potato mash, some peanut butter, some peanut butter, some kind of fried fish, some cod, right? Fried everything, right? Fried cod, some potato chips, right? And some kind of peas, right? Things like that. You know, some barcony, and everything is boiled and with a lot of sometimes with a lot of butter and bacon and beans, all kinds of beans, and that's it. Sausage, right? However, in Hong Kong, it's just like in the Canton province of China, right? You can have so many different dishes. Hong Kong is an international hub. You can see Japanese cuisine, Korean, Malaysian, of course, European, French food as well, Italian food. You can eat all kinds of style, right? Even Ethiopian food, right? But not that much in a small village in UK. Well, you can enjoy that in London as well, but the London price is a lot higher than that of Hong Kong. Okay, and so the food, many Hong Kong people will feel like it's too bland, it's very boring, really repetitive. They might be suffering from lack of nutrition to make their hair follicles die off, so they may become bald earlier. You know, I'm just joking, but you know what I mean, you know. So, and the third one is that is of course the ability to find a job for employment or make business or make money, because Hong Kong is all about business, money, and jobs. It's an international trade hub. Everybody comes here, right? So you can make a lot of money. If you want to find a job, even if you do not want to become a boss, if you want to find a job, it's a lot easier to find a job in Hong Kong than in UK. Why? It's not just because the UK job market is kind of grayish nowadays, right? It's even because you have a language barrier. And also, like I said, we cannot deny the fact there are some racial discrimination people over there. I'm not talking about everybody's being perfect. No. Western world is not the paradise, let me tell you, but it's a real good world. I think a lot better, 100 times better than the CCP China, but it's far from being perfect. You look at East Asian. So for the same kind of job, I'm not talking about every employer, right? But some employers tend to hire the local people. That's a natural trait. You can never deny that. You want to give more opportunity to the people who look like you. Think about that in Japan. Think about it in China. Think about it in Hong Kong. Same thing. Nothing to complain about. It's part of human nature here. So it's very hard for a Hong Konger who look like a typical Eastern Asian, maybe a little bit like a Southeastern Asian, speak kind of like broken English. Their English is not that perfect or conversational level, right? And how can they find a job? Right? Their previous engineering certificate does not work in UK because UK, America, Japan, whatever, any Western civilization country we're talking about, they have to recertify you before you can look for a professional job. For example, you used to be an electrician in China, but I don't trust you because the Chinese electric system is different from American electric system. So you have to reapply. You have to pass the examination to get electrician certificate first. Even the plumber, right? The Chinese plumber, I don't care. But in America, if you work as a plumber, you have to get a certificate first. And English is one of the greatest barriers there. Many people would always die down in front of that. Many people can never learn language. It's not just about how hard working you are. It's also because of the genes, the gift. Many people are just not that gifted in language. We have to admit the truth. And the fourth factor is, they still have the reminiscence, right? They still feel like, as a Hong Konger, right? They still love their motherland. They still love the China. I'm not even talking about CCP China because most Hong Kongers, they actually hate CCP. But they have this paradoxical, they have this dilemma thoughts in their mind. On one hand, they hate CCP. On the other hand, they actually love that land. They love the culture there. Like I said, they dislike a UK food, they dislike UK culture, they dislike that, they dislike that. I'm not even just talking about their subjective judgment. I'm talking about the objective truth. If you put yourself, imagine that you are one of these Hong Kongers, right? You grew up in an environment where, you have so many acquaintances, right? You have so many friends. You play out every day. Everything is pretty busy, hustling, bustling, with all the music going on 24 hours. You drive Mercedes. Everybody look at you and be a cheerful way, right? You get girlfriend pretty easily. You have this kind of environment and all of a sudden put you in a remote village of UK. How would you feel? I'm not saying that the UK tranquil life, the rustic lifestyle is not good. I like that. But for the Hong Kongers whose mind is more fixed, right? Can they accept that? Yeah, so they still have this old reminiscence. They still have this old nostalgic feelings towards China and Hong Kong. So they still want to go back. They still have the seeds in their brain deeply planted in their subconscious level. And the fifth reason is that we have to admit the fact that China is growing very rapidly nowadays. Many people say, pay attention to the CCP shells or CCP spies. I can promise you guys, I'm never one of the CCP shell or CCP spy because, let me tell you what, I am the asylum seeker here in the US. I said so many things against CCP from my true heart, and you can feel the things, right? Because it's really useless for me to explain to you. But the thing is that, you have to admit hate on CCP, which I do, does not mean that you have to downplay, you have to ignore how evilly powerful CCP is becoming. Just like you said, in order to squash your enemy, you have to know your enemy. In order to really hate CCP and bring CCP down, you have to pay attention to the fact that CCP is on the rise. The Chinese economy is booming. I'm not saying it's even performing better than America because I don't think so. Many Chinese people actually lose their job. Their unemployment is shockingly high. But because the CCP government is very good at cooking the books, right? They're just faking the numbers, right? Actually, the unemployment rate is a lot higher than the government statistics. But the thing, it doesn't matter, from the facade, like I said, CCP is becoming a lot more stronger. You can see this kind of a Fujian aircraft carrier. You can see the Tongfeng missiles. You can see a lot of some laser weapons, right? Some laser weapons. So you can see a lot of this kind of thing coming. And the J-10C by the Pakistani Air Force strike down the Rafale air fighter jet from France, right? In the Indo-Pakistani air conflict. You know what's happening, right? So Because these Hongkongers, some Hongkongers was discriminated by the Westerners there in the UK or in some other Western countries. And then when they see other Westerners, some Westerners are praising how great so-called China is, these Hongkongers might find a reason to be proud of himself again. You know what he will find? Despite he used to hate on CCP, now he might still really hating on CCP, but you know what he will do? He might bring back the shell to say, I'm a proud Chinese. You know what I mean? Guys, I think you get it, right? It's because we are human beings, right? Most people would need an excuse to be confident, right? And that Hongkongers excuse, many Hongkongers excuse nowadays is that because many people look down upon them to say, oh, this, that. They were thought like, we were running from CCP. We were fighting against CCP. We need to be respected. But then, as a matter of fact, many people disrespect them because he's Asian. You know what I mean? So if you're like, wow, I'm a democratic people. I'm a democratic person. I hate CCP. I should be respected. But they say, I don't care. You're Asian. You know what happened, right? So this Hong Konger might change his mind. He would say, wow, even if I hate on CCP, you will still hate on me just because I'm Asian? He might well, or he or she might as well change their mind to convert to CCP again. Guys, this is of vital importance. This is also one of the most important key factors to squash CCP. As long as in the Western country, I'm not talking about everybody, right? But as long as you're still hating on China, not on CCP, the more you hate on China concept, the stronger CCP would grow. Like I said, I always been emphasizing this point. The only way for you to dismantle the China CCP threat is to say that you respect China or you love China, but you disrespect CCP. Just like what Mike Pompeo had done before. You should keep doing that. Keep doing that. You should just try to bring the Chinese people who love the Western culture, who love the democracy over. Win them over as your allies so they can unite together to go against CCP altogether. Because if the more you hate on China, these freedom-loving Chinese people say, oh, I don't care, no matter I love CCP or I hate CCP, you will always hate me. So I might as well love CCP. You know what I mean? You should give these people a chance to hate CCP. Guys, listen to me. I understand it. Listen to me. I'm not lying to you guys, right? Okay, that's the second topic I want to talk about. The differences between. So these are the 5 reasons, right? I have summarized why many Hong Kongers are returning to China and Hong Kong. This is pretty unfortunate. I hope the situation could be changed. But I feel like human prejudice was deeply rooted. And it's not the Hong Kongers' fault entirely, but mostly it's because they cannot adapt to the new environment, Nobody else to blame, right? But we also have to see the fact that in the Western nations, many people do not really welcome them. That's the sad truth here. Not everybody though, many welcomers, right? But some people still do not welcome them. But Western world is a free democracy world. You can say whatever you like. I will never get offended just because a part of the Westerners dislike me, because more Western friends actually like me. You know what I mean? I will never take it personally, but some people might do, So that's why some Hong Kongers, they say, oh, I've had enough. They say, I can't find a job. People discriminate against me and it's so far away. In Hong Kong, I used to buy food within like 1 minute walk. The supermarket is not downstairs, but now I have to ride a bus. I have to use the public train system and be fearful that maybe the beggars, those kind of strayers, these mental people, they might attack me, you know what I mean? And they'll be crying, they say, oh, for me it's very so hard. Right, I kind of understand that, but that's sad. That's the sad human world, okay? Anyway, so the second topic is that the environment differences between CCP China and the world. Yeah, some culture and environmental differences. So just like I said, so the Chinese culture, the CCP Chinese culture is more like a collectivism. Chinese CCP culture is actually more collective than Japan, because being living in Japan for half a year, I know that many people say Japanese people are all like group like, yeah, but as a matter of fact, right, Japan still on the surface, right, belong to the Western world civilization, because after World War II, Japan actually fully accept the Western democracy idea. They really respect a lot of individuality, although in their corporate structure, in their school system, they have all kinds of regulations. But let me tell you, Compared with Japan, China is actually more group-centered, let me tell you. The real group pressure happened in China. Because in China, everybody watch you. I watch your progress, watch your downfall, you know. They will jeer at you when you're downfall. And when you become successful, they will become envious of you, you know. So you always have this constant pressure to compete with everybody else, let me tell you. Everybody else. Maybe your family members know, but, you know, for some families, from extreme cases, even the family members will compete with each other and they will become jealous with each other. Not in my family though. My families are good family, right? You know, there are some families like that. So I feel like in living in China, you're under huge social pressure. This social pressure is not like what you wear, you know, what you eat. It's more like what kind of social achievement you can have. You always put yourself in this kind of a engagement chart, you know. You have to measure your success. How many cars you have, how many houses you have, how many successful books that you've published, you know, how many girlfriends you have, you know, how beautiful your wife is, how smart your kid is. You always compete. They even compete like who lives longer. That's crazy. I like to compete that. Can you believe that I'm already 40 years old, you know? So I like the anti-aging movement. So in the future, I'll probably also publish a book to teach you how to reverse your aging process. Yeah, this is the trend nowadays, right? Even Elon Musk is thinking about that. A lot of the great entrepreneurs in the world are taking actions to really reverse the, you know, aging process. Salute to that, right? And so in Japan and in America, you know, the Western civilization, we don't care that much. You know, it's like you live your own life, I mind my business, you mind your business, I don't care, you know? So I feel like it's a lot more free. A lot more free, right? So like I said, many people dislike their new immigration status in a Western country, but I do. It's because despite maybe on the surface, the back in China seems like, oh, it's pretty, you know, like lively. You know, you have many chit chat around you. You have so many, the population, dense population, right? You have a lot of things going on, but you do not really have your personal freedom and your own zone. You know what I mean? In America, or even previously when I was living in Japan, right? I feel like I have my own sphere. You know, I have my own aura. You know, people kind of respect me and give me time to think about before I can render really any kind of reaction or no reaction at all. You know, I have this kind of freedom. I feel that, you know, I can control my life with my own hands. I can say whatever I want to say. But in China, it's like, from the surface, everything is brand new, it's safe, this and that, you know, especially for you Westerners, right? You see the surface. But the life there, I feel like I have to, you know what I mean, fit in a certain mode of living. Like I was told like I was one of the NPCs there. You know what I mean? Have you noticed, you know, a very crazy social news, right? The guy actually killed another person just because one person named him as an NPC. So, hey, NPC guy. And he was so infuriated and they killed that body. I'm not trying to encourage violence here, right? But I'm just telling you, being an NPC is pathetic. You always want to be the game player. You do not want to be the game played. You know what I mean? But in China, make you feel like that way. No matter how rich you are, you're not. I feel like your heart is not secured. Like you have to listen to the CCP. You have to listen to their ugly music and watch their ugly propaganda. Even though from your heart you do not really believe that, but you have to pretend that you believe that, or at least not objecting that. How painful that is. Yeah, so like I was never regretful, you know, living in China. I had left China for more than 2 years already, you know. I left China in March 2023. Now it's already November 2025. Yeah, about like, I think it's about like 2 years. Yeah, it's like 2 year and 8 months already. Yeah, almost by about 3 years, and I never regret a minute. I might miss my family and friends there, of course, because I'm also a human being, right? That's the natural part of me. But for the social environmental stuff, I never regret a minute. I enjoy every minute living outside of China. Okay, you see the sharp contrast? That's my story, and I do not regret. Guys, I do not regret. Ciao, see you next time.